Listen up.
Welcome to the PowerShell Podcast, the podcast for PowerShell and the PowerShell community. And now, here's your host, Andrew Plaw.
Hello, people. Welcome to another episode of the PowerShell Podcast. I am your host, Andrew Plaw, at Andrew Plaw Tech. I'm pretty excited for this episode. This is someone who is one of my first heroes in PowerShell way back in the day when I was a young whippersnapper. Now I'm kind of old and washed. But the person who we're having on today has done a whole bunch of amazing things in his career. We're going to talk about some of those pivot points and how nowadays he is securing M365 at Office, working on preventative security solutions, all kinds of fancy stuff. Thomas Rayner, welcome to the podcast, man. How are you?
Good, thank you. If you're old and washed, I don't want to know what that makes me.
Well, relative to how I was then, I was a whippersnapper back then, very young and impressionable.
I remember the first time I met you at PowerShell Summit 2017. Was that your first one?
I think 2018 was my first.
2018? Yeah, that was a fun time. We got married in the summer of 2018. She's my wife now. Came down to meet me because unbeknown to anybody else in attendance, I had already accepted a role at Microsoft, but I was Canadian moving to the US. There was immigration. There was background checks and stuff. So I hadn't told anybody yet, but that was an exciting time for sure.
What happened? What happened at that fateful meeting when we met? Because you remember it better than I do. I was starstruck.
Starstruck and something else. I remember Will Anderson used to run a pub crawl, and I caught up to you late because my wife had just arrived and I had to meet her, get her into, I think I had an Airbnb, and get her situated and then meet up with the crew who was doing the pub crawl. I think you were already 3 pubs deep. And so walk in, I heard, "Is that Thomas expletive Rayner?" And my wife was going, "Wow, you're like a celebrity here." And I'm like, "No, this is unique." And then I get hugged by you.
Oh, dude, that's the truth though. I remember back in the day, man, the Twitter at the time was so awesome. There were so many awesome PowerShell people doing things. And you were one of those. I remember your face with that brick wall, that huge red brick thing.
The Slack and the Discord was hopping too.
Yeah. Those were the days. I think
I wrote
was a magical
1,000
time.
of those stickers with my face with the brick wall background.
You still have
I
them?
still have like 950 of them.
I have that same thing too. I'll print stickers. I forgot them whenever I go to conference. So I just it's just, I don't have 900 though.
There was a deal on one of the sites. It was like, you can get 1,000 for whatever I paid. I paid maybe like $50. That's dirt cheap for 1,000 stickers. And as a result, I stuck one in one of the public bathrooms in the Louvre when I went to Paris. So for a short time, I had a self-portrait hanging in the Louvre. Wow.
I guess that's the risk. People can vandalize with your sticker, like put your face where you don't want it.
I kind of encourage that though. Like the last PowerShell Summit, I wasn't speaking or attending, but all my friends are in town. And so I popped by and just left like 50 of those stickers on the chocolatey table because I thought that was funny.
I think I remember that. I have some of yours somewhere. And you know what you introduced to me back in the day? So stickers, I discovered them and I felt like with stickers, I was connected to the tech community that I looked up to and like all these cool tools. I got a VS Code sticker. What? I was geeking out over it. But then I think it was you that put me onto this forever ago. And it was like, get a poster board kind of thing and do it on that and like frame it and put it on your wall kind of thing. That was you, right?
Yeah, I did that with a whiteboard and magnets because I'm lucky enough to come into a lot of stickers, and so put them on devices. Oh, this is a work given laptop and you have to give it back. You're getting a new device. A lot of the time you're like, no, all my stickers. And so if I had duplicates of stuff, those were the ones that I put on my devices because they were kind of disposable. But I made sure to keep at least one, or if I only had one, it went up on the sticker wall. And then COVID happened, and now I don't have a sticker wall anymore.
But I want to set the stage because you and I, we go back, but they may not know you because you haven't been around PowerShell for a while. So these days, you're kind of doing your thing in security. And to be frank, you're probably not using PowerShell much at all. Or are you?
Extremely little. I'm not even a Windows user, so I don't run a lot of PowerShell a whole lot of the time anymore.
So then that would beg the question, wait, what? I thought this is the PowerShell podcast. What the heck? And I think that the topic of today, we're not going to tell you how to use any particular commandlet, but we're going to explore your story of going from someone who was a sysadmin, kind of cut their teeth with PowerShell, was able to sort of use that as a way to learn IT at a higher level, and then boom, transition into more security focused roles, which you've been doing for a while now, right? How long have you been doing more security work?
I've been doing security. My role has been security one way or another for a little over 7 years now, since I joined Microsoft. I've been writing code for money since I was 12. That was 25 years ago. Not good code, but code. Like I paid my way through college with help from family, but also doing freelance web development. I was writing PHP and MySQL stuff on a LAMP stack to make extra money during college. But my degrees were all in more sysadmin related stuff. And there were programming courses in there that I really enjoyed, but I kind of just thought the future for my career was going to be more route and switch, more server admin, infrastructure type of things like that. And this was like 2010, 2009, 2010, 2011, and then emerging cloud stuff. But what I quickly found in my career was remoting into a whole bunch of servers and clicking stuff sucked. But what didn't suck was writing a script to go do it for you. What is the scripting language of choice? Well, everybody had Active Directory, everybody had Windows servers, everybody had Exchange, and so everybody had PowerShell. And so that was really how I got started using PowerShell. And it quickly made a huge difference in my career because it was a force multiplier. As my peers were clicking and pointing and setting up GPOs and things like that, I was writing scripts to automate my job as much as I could and go solve harder, more interesting problems. And that whole work smarter, not harder mantra really rang true for me. And I was so passionate about it. I started blogging about PowerShell. I started doing public speaking about PowerShell because it was so effective in the types of roles I was doing. And people resonated with that, especially in my community. Like, I'm not from a tech town. I live in the Redmond area now, working at Microsoft, but I'm originally from Edmonton, Alberta, Canada, which is oil town. The hockey team is the Edmonton Oilers. And so I worked in education, healthcare, construction, doing this. And I was awarded the Microsoft MVP award in 2015. 2015? Yeah. For blogging and speaking. And that opened up a world of doors for me. That opened up even more speaking, even more blogging. That got me a job. They saw I had an MVP on my resume, and so they were hiring a junior position, but they opened a senior position, excuse me, just for me, because they wanted the Microsoft MVP to work for them. So it was a prestigious award. I was very lucky and grateful for having that. And that whole, the blogging and the public speaking and the public community contributions were what led to me getting hired at Microsoft as well. I didn't apply to my first job at Microsoft. My application was solicited by somebody who worked on the team I got hired on because they saw my blog and they said, wow, we're trying to solve a lot of the same problems on our team. And so would you come and join our team and help upskill our ops people and help make them a little bit more codey as well? So that's a long story, but that's how I ended up at Microsoft. And that's kind of the difference that PowerShell has made in my career. I don't write a ton of it anymore because I've moved around within Microsoft. But it's definitely one of the cornerstones of how my career has gone.
Do you miss anything about it? I mean, that was kind of a golden era, at least. I think a lot of people who end up doing really cool things like you have kind of that era where things are clicking and everything's kind of going like this. Do you miss those days at all?
The things I miss about the past in my career are being more community focused. I don't spend very much time on the PowerShell Discord or Slack anymore. I remember when it was just an IRC channel. I'm not as connected to many of the people that I spoke to nearly every day in those communities. And I don't necessarily speak at the PowerShell Summit or other user groups about PowerShell as much anymore. However, like in full transparency, I never really loved PowerShell as a language. It was useful. It had its purpose. But I was never writing PowerShell going like, boy, I really love writing code in this language, because I came from writing stuff for Linux servers, and like PHP is such a wonderful language, but I love writing code. I love building things. And I don't hate PowerShell by any means. It just wasn't my favorite, but it was the right tool for a lot of different jobs. So I don't miss writing PowerShell because I still get to write lots of code. But the thing I definitely do miss is community involvement. And so it's fun to come and chat with you and be on a podcast and get a taste of the glory days.
Yeah, because I think your journey that you've been on, people are starting their journey, that very journey you're on. Maybe they'll end up in a similar place, maybe adjacent in some other ways, but they're on that path where they have a job to do. PowerShell aligns with them short term at being more effective and getting things done, along with learning for a lot of people how to code for the first time. And then all of a sudden they can, learn things properly. Because I feel like it's really hard to learn technology if you can't actually like poke with it. Like, how are you going to learn how to program Cisco switches if you can't actually interact with them?
Yeah, I agree. I think like there's different learning styles. Like there's some people who will read the book and then genuinely know how to go do it. But I think this is just colloquial, so maybe I'm way off. But I think most people who are in technology benefit and learn the most from doing stuff with it, through going and hitting the hard edges and experimenting. And I think PowerShell is a great gateway language, especially for people who are in those more traditional ops roles, who have repetitive tasks or mundane tasks, and they want to spend less time pointing and clicking and more time working on things that are more interesting and less mundane. PowerShell is very forgiving as a language. It's interpreted. There's no compiler to fight with. It's not white space sensitive or anything like that. And there's great documentation. There's people and so much of it comes from Microsoft. There's people writing modules for it. It's got an active development community. The team within Microsoft is active in its community. It's a well-supported language. There's a lot of first and third party people who are invested in helping people learn it and troubleshooting when they get stuck. And it's super flexible. Like you might go, oh, I don't have Exchange on-prem. What do I need to learn PowerShell for? Well, Azure has a PowerShell module. The Graph API has a PowerShell module. Third-party products like VMware have PowerShell modules. Odds are there's a module for whatever product that you're using. And if there's not, there's an opportunity for you. But even if you're just interacting with REST APIs, PowerShell is great for that. Even if you're a Linux user, trying to curl a REST API and then digest the JSON in Bash, it's a pain in the ass. But in PowerShell, it returns an object, and you don't have to go format it yourself and try to use cut and awk to figure out what's going on. You can just work with the object right as it's returned.
So, I mean, that's a great point, but it kind of brings me up to something. So you already knew how to code when you learned PowerShell. Did PowerShell change how you approached problem solving or automating things? Or like once you really had that exposure for a while, did it kind of change the way you think about things?
I don't know if PowerShell did it, but I definitely changed while I was writing PowerShell predominantly, because I went from like writing custom PHP content management systems for whichever client would pay me to do it, to writing what could be considered enterprise grade software. And like, here's our new user onboarding. We hired a new person. We need to onboard them to 18 different systems. You have new concerns and new stakeholders that don't go away at the end of a contract. And you have new opportunities to learn about maintainability and security and scalability, performance, and things like that that I didn't really have much of a concern with. Like if your website has 10 active users on it, that was a busy client for me. And so I didn't have to worry about a ton of performance. It was more just like, I'm trying to manage my own inventory and I need a tool to do it. Whereas if you have an HR department of 20 people and they report to your director or whatever, that the tool you wrote them doesn't work. That's a different case. Not that I ever wanted to disappoint a web development client, but the stakes were different. There was more money at stake. There were higher standards. There were other development teams within those companies that I could consult with and learn from, and kind of go from the learning it as I go to a more formal education. And so I definitely matured a lot as a developer while I was writing PowerShell as my primary language.
Now you're in security.
I am.
What technologies are exciting for you now?
It's hard not to say AI, because I almost feel like that's a cheater answer, because it's like you could come up and say, oh, have you seen DSC3 or something like that? Not to put down DSC or the team that works on it. It's not an exciting project to me. Maybe it is to somebody else, but I've been experimenting a little bit with like AI coding tools and just for personal projects and things like that. And I think the rhetoric of AI is going to take all the developer jobs is overblown. I can see how it might make the space more competitive, but you're not likely to get your job taken by AI. You're going to get your job taken by someone who uses AI better than you do. But not just as a coding tool, but as a preventative security tool. People are probably largely familiar with like Copilot, or like if you use VS Code and Copilot's enabled and it's giving you tab completion and you're going, wow, this is really good. How did it know that I was doing all these changes or that I was implementing this boilerplate? I did a great job. What if I could train it on things that were unique to my company, that are unique to the type of project that I'm working on, that are unique to the security concerns? Part of the problem, I think, with AI is trained on all our docs and all our public code. And a lot of public code is vulnerable. And a lot of docs say things like token equals blank, comment, don't hard code your token. Well, that's the example that your LLM has consumed. And so if I was training my VS Code extension on the OWASP top 10 and how to detect and mitigate those and other kinds of vulnerabilities, and maybe I had it plugged into a live CVE feed and was going, now my Copilot, whatever you want to name it, something different, is specifically a security tool that's making sure that my web app isn't vulnerable to SQL injection. That's making sure that I'm not accidentally committing creds into Git. That's making sure that I'm definitely hitting all this low-hanging fruit, but also I don't have a memory leak or a buffer overflow vulnerability that might get exploited. Things that can be difficult, especially for new people, to spot as they're writing code or as they're following examples or as they're just hitting tab and cursor to accept the change. I think there's a huge opportunity there, and that's really exciting.
I like it for a lot of small things, like all the stuff that I don't want to be bothered to memorize, like the tiny little things of life.
I like it a lot for learning new languages. Like I recently picked up Go because I wanted to write a Discord bot, and I'd never written Go before, but I'd written code in a dozen other object-oriented languages, and Go seemed like it would be something I could pick up. And that's kind of tangential to PowerShell as a jumping off point, because if you can if you can understand how to write code in PowerShell, you can understand how to write code in C#, in Go, in Java, in PHP, and pick up a language. Like there's a lot of object-oriented languages out there, and you can learn it. You can learn C. It's different. You'll have a bit more of a learning curve than if you picked up Go. But if you understand the fundamentals of object-oriented programming, you can pick up a new language. And so that's what I did with Go. But instead of poring over manuals and looking up all the syntax myself, I fired up Copilot and used that to my advantage. And even something as simple, like not even using the chat, just putting in a comment that said, this is where I'm going to go connect to Discord, enter, Copilot, go. And then puts in the boilerplate code and proofread that, make sure it's doing what you want. That's not hard coding your token into your main.go file. But that saved me looking things up, learning things like Go doesn't have a built-in contains operator. So if you want to see if a collection contains a specific element, you have to go write that yourself or use another module. I wouldn't have known that, but I put in a little comment. You see if this user is in my array of allowed listed users. And then it went and made my helper function and then implemented it. I was like, oh, spend some time learning. That's why I did that. Okay, that actually makes sense. Oh, that was helpful. That saved me. What is the contains operator in Go Stack Overflow searches and stuff?
Yeah, and I think that's great for people who are, if you're learning PowerShell for your first language, congrats. As time goes on, the ability to take what you write in PowerShell and repurpose it using AI is going to get better, but also as you learn it better, you're going to understand these conventions that are present all over the place. Because I'm curious if you see this, but that's what a lot of IT is. It's kind of like the same thing, sort of like in a different form, in a different domain.
Yeah, I mean, most companies have, I don't want to overgeneralize and say they all have the same problems, but a lot of companies have a lot of the same problems. And there's unique problems everywhere, but everybody onboards, everybody offboards, everybody has some kind of productivity suite. Everybody has non-technical users that need to access company resources. These kinds of problems all start looking pretty similar once you start breaking them into their more abstract components. How do I get a new person into my HR system, a new email inbox, provisioned with our instant messenger, whatever that may be? And for some people, that might be Active Directory, Teams, and Outlook. For other people, that could be different products. But the principles of interacting with those services and products are all pretty transferable. And the fact that if you can automate it in one stack, there's a good chance you can automate it in another stack. And so you're learning transferable skills, and you're learning programming, which is a highly transferable skill.
And hopefully you're getting paid for it too. That's the goal.
That's also nice.
Yes, that's the dream. It's kind of so many things I feel like we might take for granted in IT, like getting paid to learn, getting a laptop. I remember my first IT job. I took a new job because they said part of it was I would get a work laptop, and I wanted that.
Yeah, man. Yeah, it's I get to work at home too. That's a nice thing. That's huge for me. My daughter turns 2 in October, and I've been working from home since 2020. But that means that I've been around for her first steps. I've been around for, she's babbling like crazy. I get to take coffee breaks with my family. That's huge for me. And that doesn't happen. And this isn't to put anyone else down, but that my brother-in-law is a firefighter and he has young kids. He doesn't get to do that from home. And his job is wonderful. He's great for doing it, but there's pros and cons, right? And that's one of the big pros of working in technology. Even if you're in the office, that office is probably air conditioned. You probably have resources at your disposal, like getting to learn on the job. These jobs tend to pay pretty well. If you can figure out how to maintain good posture and healthy eating habits, you're not going to burn out your body too badly. Take your ergonomics seriously. I have a trackball mouse and an Ergodox keyboard, but there's a lot to like about working in tech.
I'm going to have to ask a few questions to kind of get this, because I'm curious as to what role communication played in your career. So we're talking early on, you were doing some PowerShell stuff and automating things. And automating things is one part, but I think another part of it is making it visible and having the managers who decide your raises be aware of it. I mean, obviously you're very good at communicating through the blog and talks and stuff like that. But back in the day when you were kind of cutting your teeth on your way up in that first kind of role with PowerShell, were you communicating with your manager, or was that some kind of skill you learned along the way, or where's communication in there?
I've always been the kind of person who enjoys and functions better with a candid relationship with my leadership. And I haven't always had that, but I was definitely lucky to have a lot of it, especially early in my career. And so I had the types of managers who would go out for lunch with the team, and had a social casual relationship. And they're still your boss. You don't abuse that, but that means when you're having a one-on-one with them, or when you're having a sync up meeting, like a staff meeting, when you go through what you're working on, I'm trying to avoid agile terms like stand-ups and whatever. You get to talk about how you've decided to tackle a problem and why you've chosen to do it that way. Because what I think a lot of people run into sometimes when they're like a traditional point and click admin environment, and then they're the ones who decided, I'm going to go and learn PowerShell. I'm going to go and change my career for the better, I hope. The first task you bite off doing that is probably going to take longer than if you had just RDP'd into the server and made the change. And so there's a valid question maybe coming from your very engaged and alert manager. Why did this 10-minute change take you 3 hours? That's a reasonable question to ask. Well, it's because now I have a script that does it, and then I can apply that to the next problem. And the next problem might take an hour, but now it'll only take 5 minutes. I'm investing in my career so that when those harder problems come along, I'll have the knowledge and skills and abilities to go and use these tools to my advantage. I'm making the things I do repeatable for others. I'm making the things I do reviewable by others. I'm making the things I do auditable, and eventually, as I get better at doing this, more performant, more stable. You can't go, well, you can, but it's tricky. You can't really go audit. Somebody RDP'd into a server, clicked the event viewer, exported the events, scanned it in an XML viewer, and then found out what was going on the same way you can audit. I have a script in source control, and I've changed it to go and export these logs. Those aren't always things that your manager is going to appreciate right off the bat. They might appreciate you closing that ticket in 5 minutes instead of 3 hours. But I think there's conversations you can have along the lines of, I'm trying to advance in my career. I'm trying to be the type of person who can do this more quickly, and who can solve those problems the right way, the more secure way, where I can write a script, have a teammate review it, deploy it without ever logging into our production environment, and have it go do its job, rather than leaving port 3389 open with an admin password that half the team knows. There's kind of an organizational maturity that needs to be in place, or at least aspirational, for people to really be able to do that, I think.
Yeah. Shared a lot of good things there, but that's one thing I encourage those people who might be like the first person at their org learning PowerShell. I'm going to guess that probably things aren't secured that well. So it's a fantastic opportunity for you to lead that charge, both in terms of learning PowerShell, getting source control, getting these things done best practice, because your employer currently, whatever, for me personally, I want to do everything in my career to be best practice. If we have 100 computers, I want to, ideally, if it doesn't take too much more time, make it so it could scale to 100,000, even if that's not in our plans whatsoever.
Even if you just have a plan to scale it, sometimes that's enough too.
Yeah. But I think that if you want to lead that charge, you absolutely have to communicate with your manager. Even if you just want to learn PowerShell, like just tell your manager, hey, this is what I'm trying to do. Here's kind of where I'm trying to go with my career. Would it be all right if I start, I don't know, taking a 30-minute break every Wednesday to come to PowerShell Wednesdays, or, spending some time every day working on growing yourself? A good employer will probably be somewhat aligned with that, especially if you can get them to see the added value that you'll bring once you can upskill a little bit. And if you can lead with a little win, that'd be great. If you have some kind of small win, like, hey, I wrote this one-liner to query those things for you and put them in a CSV.
Yeah, I don't think people should normally start with the ambitious 6-month project. That's not a valuable learning experience. The more valuable learning experience is the 10-line script that goes and creates that CSV and emails it to the right people. I think there's an element too of ownership over your career. Like, your advancement is your responsibility. Your growth is your responsibility. And your boss and your stakeholders are key players in that, but they don't own your career. You do. And the types of people that are actively investing in their own growth and are committed to doing things the Daft Punk way, harder, better, faster, and stronger, those are leaders within their teams. And those are people who get promoted faster. Those are people who get more responsibilities more quickly. Those are people who advance over their peers. And by demonstrating your commitment to doing the right thing the right way, you're showing all the right signals to your boss and their boss that you're the type of person they want to keep around. So you're the type of person that they should be rewarding.
Yep. And I also like to think like bigger picture. You want to roll the same way your whole career, at least in my opinion. I want to have been doing my best, being honest, trying to do best practice when possible, being coachable, all that kind of stuff for my whole career, not just for one job, because that's just the better way to go about things, in my opinion. And especially because, I mean, I'm probably never going to work for anything super secretive, but if all of a sudden you get a job where you're not supposed to talk about X, Y, and Z, and your whole career you've been blabbing about things you shouldn't be talking about, that's kind of a dangerous habit to have. Same thing with like doing insecure code writing stuff. Like, it might be cool in your personal lab, but these can be kind of dangerous habits to adopt in your life if you try and take your career serious. And I think there's a high ceiling on what you can do with your career in tech.
Yeah, it's really easy to change your reputation for the worse. It is really hard to change your reputation for the better. And so if you're the person who is hard coding credentials in scripts and leaving them in public shares, then stop doing that. And then you're the person who quit doing that. And there is a path to recovery. But if you never did that in the first place, because you spent the time and thought about what good secure code looks like, then that's even better. Everybody makes mistakes, especially when they're learning. I don't want to dump on anybody because I did that once. Whoops. It's not like that's a career-ending move all the time. But if you are more deliberate and thoughtful and you consider things like you're saying, how do I scale this to more users? How do I make this run more efficiently? Maybe that's not the rabbit hole you have to jump down this very moment. But if your mindset is like that, it's a Microsoft cliche of having a growth mindset. I always want to be getting better. I always want to be doing more for my customers, whether they're internal or external. I want to be writing more secure code, and just thinking of your own personal growth that way. That's never the wrong move.
Absolutely. And I didn't realize I was going to say growth mindset. I didn't know that was a Microsoft-y thing. I've been influenced in ways I don't even know. But for me, it was really helpful when I could growth mindset it and be like, if I'm doing something, if it doesn't work out well, I can learn from it and grow. And that's totally fine. I'm just going to put myself out there and do it. And if it does go well, that's cool. But like, both ends, things are okay. Obviously, this includes our job, where like if you lose your employment, that's kind of a big disruptor, which kind of throws off that equation a little bit. But in general, I find it a little bit easier if you can just be yourself and be ready to learn, make mistakes. And I think the same kind of idea can apply to like IT teams who are doing something. You don't want to be so afraid to do things that you never improve, because there could be something that happens. Yeah. It's like finding that happy medium.
I think one of the things people bump into a lot is the proverbial, I don't have time for that. I have a ticket queue of 10,000 tickets and I need to close 200 tickets every day, or I'm not going to hit my KPIs. I'm not going to hit my metrics, and I'm going to get yelled at. And I think people have a tough time asking for what they need to learn, because maybe your 8-hour workday is totally full of those tickets you have to close every day. And your personal time, I'm vigorously defensive over my personal time, especially now that I've got kids. And so I can understand people who don't want to work on side projects or read the books in their personal time. But you shouldn't be afraid to have a conversation with your boss that says, this is what I want for my career. And this is what I'm asking you for in order to achieve it. If I could get that ticket quota down from 200 to 175, that would give me a half hour a day or whatever to go and learn these types of things and work on these internal side projects, develop these skills, and eventually I'll be closing 500 tickets a day because I'll have automated the whole thing. But I need that upfront investment from you so I can make it in myself, so I can make it in our company. Please help me achieve these goals. You're not deferring that career ownership to your boss. You're asking them for the resources that you need to make that investment. And if they say no, your job is tickets. Your job will always be tickets. And no, you can't have time to go learn things other than closing tickets. Then one of two things is happening. Either you're not articulating the value of what you're trying to learn correctly, and they don't understand why it's so beneficial, or you might be in the wrong role.
I want to talk more about this when we get back after this message from our sponsors.
This is the PowerShell Podcast.
Most of you know the PowerShell Podcast is sponsored and made possible by PDQ. I've had questions from listeners asking, what's PDQ and what do you do? Well, we help IT teams automate endpoint management. PDQ Connect is our cloud-based tool for real-time software deployment, patching, scripting, remote access, and vulnerability management. It's fast, flexible, and built for people who just want things to work. If you want to see it in action, head to pdq.com/podcast and check out our interactive demo. No signups, no emails, no credit card, just a fast and easy way to explore how it works. That's pdq.com/podcast. Automated endpoint management that doesn't slow you down.
Now, back to the PowerShell Podcast.
All right, Thomas, I got to pick your brain on this. I talk to a lot of people. There's people who listen to a bunch of the podcast episodes. I'm talking years at a time. And that might be the most PowerShell engagement they get. Yeah, they'll do some one-liners, they'll get some AI stuff, but they never went through that period where they actually fully absorbed PowerShell. They ran a couple commands. And everyone that I know that didn't come into PowerShell knowing a previous language, everyone who's achieved some kind of level or that I've talked to on the podcast with PowerShell, went through a period where they sort of were really absorbing the information. Right? They went from just kind of casually reading an article here or there or a cool blog post to diving in, to running code for, a couple months. Passions can't last forever, but I think you kind of do need to have that time where you're invested, because it is not easy if you don't have programming history or experience with any of this kind of stuff. There's going to be some new concepts you're going to have to learn. And if you just step away every single time you run into a little hurdle, you'll never make the progress you need to really take things to the next level.
Yeah. I think one of my pet peeves in the technology industry is when people say something is easy. Nothing that we do is easy. Like, okay, turning on your computer is pretty easy. You press a button. Most people can figure that out. But even entry-level help desk positions require prerequisite knowledge and training that the average person doesn't have. If everybody at your company knew how to modify the registry, then they wouldn't be asking you to do it. And and you can learn some of these things quickly, but writing hello world in PowerShell is easy in the scale of things you can do with PowerShell. That's a deep rabbit hole, but I don't think it's right for people to trivialize and say that's easy on its own. Understanding what it is you're doing, rather than you can copy and paste it off the internet. Most people can do that. But the vast majority of humans just use their phone or a web browser, and that's their primary interaction with their computer. As soon as you start opening up VS Code, you're in a minority group that doesn't do that with their computer. And so it is hard. It's hard to learn a new skill, whether you're learning French or Spanish or PowerShell. It's difficult. And it's important to have patience with yourself and forgiveness for mistakes, and also to hold yourself to a high standard and expect things to work and expect there to be progress. But the initial learning curve, like the type of people you mentioned that have never written code in any language before, it's a different paradigm. You're creating a set of instructions for your computer to execute without your intervention for the most part. You're interacting with your computer in a way that the majority of people never will. And so you have some grace and patience and forgive yourself when it's not going as quickly as you wish it did. It's so easy to hop online and compare yourself to prominent voices in the community and go, this person knows everything. I'm never going to be at their level. One, you don't know that. And two, you don't have to be at their level. You have to be at your level. Your career goal might not be to host the PowerShell podcast and be this influential voice in the community who does so many wonderful things for others. It might just be to not have to manually close all those tickets every day. That can be a net improvement to your life. And in addition to being patient with yourself when it's going slow, celebrate the wins. If you're on day 0 and you made Hello World pop up in the blue PowerShell console, that's a win. That's good. You don't have to throw yourself a parade and get drunk and celebrate like crazy, but you can feel good about that. You did something, you figured something out that you didn't know yesterday. And tomorrow we're going to go bite off something else. And if it doesn't work out and it's not as effective a learning day as the day before, that's all right, because you probably learned something. You learned about error messages that you can't get rid of. You learned about why I was trying to think of a PowerShell example that would crash your system, but for the most part, it's pretty safe. Like you're learning, it's fine. That's experimentation is part of the process.
Yes, it is. I think you're speaking some facts that I think a lot of people deal with, and I have personally lived. Like whenever I met you for the first time, and back in those days, there was the Power Scripting podcast at the time, and I would listen to it and I would absorb all this stuff, and I liked it a lot. But I didn't think that I had what it took to do this kind of stuff. I just felt like a different world almost. And with that, I learned about that growth mentality, that growth mindset kind of thing. And I realized that I didn't have to compare myself to others. It was okay. I became patient, like you said, which is such a hard thing because you see this awesome, amazing stuff done by people who've been doing it for 10 years. So it's makes sense when you have that context. But when you can be patient, then it's just a matter of time. If you're persistent, if you're exposing yourself to the language, whether or not you learn it as fast as someone else doesn't really matter because it's going to eventually happen. It's not a race. We are all sort of in this together, just at different time frames and with different directions we're heading.
Everybody has a different level of natural aptitude. Some people take to writing code like a fish in water. Other people have to work at it a lot harder, like any other skill. Like some people can ice skate from birth, basically. Other people work really hard at learning how to stay up on their feet. But if everyone's having fun out on the ice, everybody's winning. And so comparing yourself to others can be useful in terms of gauging your own progress, but it's not helpful if you're using it as a weapon against yourself. It's not useful if you're using it to discourage yourself. It's good to have I don't want to call them idols because I think that's inflationary, that's hyperbolic. It's good to have role models, people that you look up to, and people who might represent an aspirational goal. For a lot of people in the past, that was like Don Jones or somebody who he was all over PowerShell. He knew Jeffrey Snover, and now Jeffrey Snover doesn't even work at Microsoft anymore, and Don Jones doesn't write PowerShell anymore. But it's important to have voices and people in the community that you can look up to, and whether you model your career off of them or not, to go, that person learned, I can learn. That person knows things, I can learn those things and know them too. I think imposter syndrome is kind of the other side of that coin. Once you start learning some things, and even people just within maybe you're not blogging and speaking and doing these things that other people consider heroic. You're just telling people within your own company, on your own team, here's how I solved my problem. And they look at you like, what? You're able to do that? You figure that out? You're not manually pointing and clicking all the time like I am? Like that imposter syndrome will get at you fast. And that's okay because it's probably felt by the others that you're looking up to as well.
It really is. That's been kind of one of the interesting things about doing the pod. I was nervous to talk to all these people, and now I've done it long enough that I've met pretty much every single person who I've looked up to, and I found that literally every single one of them is pretty much the same, just like a normal person. Some have spent a lot more time with a given thing. Some are a little bit better at communication, like inherently, and they've practiced it too, blah, blah. But it's all kind of just normal people. Some of them get super nervous. A lot of them still deal with imposter syndrome regularly. And imposter syndrome isn't just a tech thing. It's kind of like a life thing. It just so happens to apply to this PowerShell conversation we're having now. But yeah, it's been so weird to see that play out and kind of go through my experience of grappling and growing and becoming comfortable with things. And yeah, it's an interesting little piece of life.
It's a peculiar phenomenon. The first time some drunk person in a bar yells, "Is that you?" You kind of go, "Whoa, I've made it." No, I haven't. I'm going to go back home after this and write PowerShell again. You touch on a good point, though. Like, you've spoken to a lot of the big names in the community. They're all pretty decent people to talk to. Like, if you've had a chance to talk to Jeffrey or Jeff Hicks or Jason, like, I'm listing first names like I know them personally, and I don't. But Don Jones is extremely personable. And the only reason you might not get a deeply personal and helpful conversation with some of these people is just because they're busy. Like, they get a lot of contact. It doesn't mean, but anytime you get their attention and kind of cut through the noise, they're all extremely personable. The PMs on that team, super friendly, helpful, invested in helping others. The names in the community that are big, like, go talk to James Petty, who runs the PowerShell Summit. He'll talk your ear off, like, in a good way. There's tons of names. Like, I think, did you just have on James Brundage?
Yeah.
Yeah. Like, people like him, Joel, J. Cole, who have been around PowerShell basically since it was a thing, super knowledgeable, and all very willing to go and talk to you and contribute to your growth. I don't want to speak for those guys. Like, go DM them, go hit them up. Like, I don't want to volunteer them as mentors. Although in my experience and from what I've seen, they're all extremely generous and helpful with their time.
Absolutely. You know, one thing, there's a lot that, as someone in this space of trying to help people with their PowerShell journeys, there's a lot that I can impart on them that I think would be helpful. But there's one thing that I find for 95% of the people that I interact with, where I'm trying to kind of see how I can help them out with their little journey or mentoring them. And that is getting them to actually reach out to people, getting them to actually say things in the community instead of just lurking, actually taking those steps and realizing that, like, you don't have to be alone in this journey. It's suddenly when you do that, when I did that for the first time, it was a whole, like, weight off my chest with the imposter syndrome thing. I didn't have to keep pretending like I wasn't having errors doing this simple thing or looking at this object or that kind of thing.
Yeah, I think akin to that is just saying yes to opportunities too. Like, you have an opportunity to go hop on the Discord or Slack. You have an opportunity to go on X or Blue Sky or whatever. Like, there's PowerShell communities throughout the internet. There's local user groups a lot of the time, whether they're PowerShell user groups or there's lots that meet virtually, or just Microsoft user groups or tech user groups. You can leave your house and go meet people, or you can hop online and go meet people. And just saying yes to those opportunities is big. And same within the smaller internal sphere of your career, saying yes to the opportunity to go automate something, saying yes to the opportunity to take on a challenge that you may not know how to do, but you're committed to learning how to do it. If you refuse to leave the comfortable safety of your bubble, then what's the cliche? Like, if you always do what you've always done, you'll always get what you've always had. And that doesn't mean you have to go, like, I'm hedging now. You don't have to go take a gigantic risk that might jeopardize your career. But there's going to be opportunities that come up along the way to go and interact with peers, or with people who you want to have them as peers, or to go and try something new at work where the stakes may exist or may not. But if you don't try anything new, you'll never get anything different.
That's facts right there. And I'll say, if you're out there listening, I mean, gosh, if you haven't gotten involved in the community in some way, join a community in some variety. You know, I host PowerShell Wednesday. I do the podcast. There's ways to get in touch at Andrew Plotech on all socials if you want to reach out to me. But also, pretty much every single guest I've had on would be happy to at least hear from you. I mean, some are busier than others, but you might have luck, especially if it's actually a heartfelt, kind of relevant message. Maybe you've used their module or tool or something like that and can provide your perspective. Always goes a little bit farther. But there's also just public spaces too, where there's a lot of these great names who know PowerShell way better than I do. and probably will ever. They're just chilling in Discord, ready to answer questions.
Yeah, I think that's a great point. And I'm happy to chat with people. ThomasRayner.ca, Canadian. I've got blog posts that haven't been updated in a while, but hey, if you want to get your CISSP, I've got a long series on that. I've got a lot of feedback that's helped people get that cert. But there's a find me section. You can reach out to me and chat. I don't know how much help I'll be with PowerShell. It's been a while since I've written any, but I think mentorship is one of the most important things anybody in their career can do. And that doesn't have to be a full-blown official mentoring relationship. Sometimes that's just advice. What we're doing right now, what you're doing, is mentorship. It's helping people in their career find their path and give them guidance.
Yep. And one thing I learned in the PowerShell community was that mentorship doesn't have to be this expert novice thing. Like, it's okay for me to be better than you in some areas and help you with that, and for you to be better at other areas and give me some advice and kind of have a mutual relationship. There doesn't have to be this better, worse kind of thing as the defining factor.
You can have a group of peers that just support each other. And I think there's a technical circular mentorship, is where everybody is at a reasonably the similar spot in their career, but they're all just there to bounce things off of, support each other, stuff like that. And that's literally just a group of friends who all have the same interests or career path in mind.
And it all starts with making a friend, putting yourself out there. I have a problem historically with not being able to say no to opportunity. If I see opportunity, I got to take it. And I encourage you to do that, because you never know what kind of wild stuff can come. You attend a PowerShell meetup, you meet a certain person, you end up collaborating on a project. It will never happen if you don't put yourself out there. There is seriously so much. I mean, my career is my personal life, I'll say, actually. My life at large has benefited so much from putting myself out there and getting to meet other people who are like-minded and who are also growing and striving for more. It's been like the number one changer of my career and life, I'd say.
Yeah, my decision to start writing a blog directly led to my career at Microsoft. It's and that's just writing. That's a one-way street with in terms of your broadcasting information, speaking at user groups, attending a user group, and just sticking around to chat with people after. Like, you don't have to change the world. You just have to change what you're doing.
Yeah. Even just saying, leaving a star on GitHub is a very starter method, but it is a method. Or leaving a comment on a social post if someone shares something that you found helpful. You never know what kind of things can kick off from that.
Yeah, especially, like you touched on GitHub, go open an issue. You don't have to have the fix, but I'm running your module in this setting and it crashes this way. Here's the logs. Please help. You're contributing to the community.
Absolutely. Yeah, it's very important for us to communicate for ourselves in this world, or else things don't really work out quite the way they should. That applies to managers. That applies to being clear with ourselves, with our goals and what we're really trying to do. And if our actions reflect that, well, dude, you got some wisdom. I can see why you've made a heck of a career for yourself, man. And I really appreciate you bringing some of that wisdom with us.
They say wisdom comes from experience, and experience comes from bad judgment. So if I have any wisdom, it's because I've lived it.
Yep. I like that. I found a certain time in life, I tried to stop learning the hard way because I'd just done it forever. I still do it sometimes, but
yeah.
That's
one of the things. Like, the more you do anything, the better you get at it. And that includes learning.
Yep. Oh my dude. See, you should listen to the podcast, because a lot of these things you're talking about, they're just like so close to my heart. Yeah. I talk about learning how you learn. That is a forever thing. It's not just IT. It's for the rest of your life in every single domain. You are going to have that relationship with yourself where you're going to be ingesting new information and hopefully memorizing some of it. Like, that's a forever thing. And you should hopefully be getting better at that all the time.
Yeah. I don't think many people get into tech because it stays the same.
Nope. But sometimes employers are so static that it can feel that way. Like, you're stuck on this stack. You can't implement anything new. There's all this red tape. There's no PowerShell.
Sometimes, I don't want to be overly optimistic, but I think a lot of the time people are overly pessimistic. They asked once 5 years ago and got a no, so they never ask again. When in reality, maybe what you just need to do is find out how to communicate the value of your idea better and try again.
Yeah, dude, that's facts. Absolutely, man. So much of it that I see with people and sysadmins is some people don't always phrase things the best when communicating with other departments.
Yeah,
I know I've lived that myself.
I think one of the most valuable soft skills you can have is being able to articulate the value of whatever it is in technology to both a technical stakeholder and to a non-technical stakeholder. Like, why? I want to go learn PowerShell. Why? That's a very reasonable question for your boss's boss to ask you, because it's good for my career. How? Like these are, you can role play these things. You're like, hey, that's a great thing to do with like ChatGPT or whatever. Fire it up and say, I want to role play a conversation with my boss. This is what I want. Help me form the best argument. Go and practice articulating that value statement until you understand it in and out. You don't have to rehearse it perfectly, but why do you want to go learn PowerShell? Because it'll make me better in my role and it'll achieve this, that, and the other thing and improve the overall, I'm being generic, improve the overall condition of our company in these ways and better for me in these ways. And that's why I think it's a good idea. That's a lot more compelling than, well, because it's going to take me further in my career, period.
I think there's also, you have to be able to separate yourself from your idea or the thing you care about. You have to understand it's a business decision at the end of the day. It might be a great technical decision, but ultimately we are working inside of a business that has certain objectives and they can make choices based around that. But it is up to you whether it's security stuff. I mean, all security stuff's like a business choice, whether you want to act on it or not. But you need to practice those skills of presenting to leadership who may not know the technical details like you, what the actual choice that they're going to be making here is and what your value proposition is.
Yeah, I did a talk years ago, I think it was like 6 years ago now, on how the title was How to Take Risks Without Getting Clawed in Your Face. But the premise was how to measure and articulate risk. Like how do you assign a dollar value to the fact that you manually patch servers? And what is the dollar value of an automated patching system? Because then it becomes very, like, your bosses and stakeholders might not understand the risk itself, but they will understand the dollar value associated with that risk. And that requires some flexibility in the way you think about what it is you're trying to achieve. But if you can assign those like dollars and cents to something, that instantly makes it way more digestible and understandable for any non-technical user.
Yep. And same kind of things apply when it comes to vouching for yourself as you go through your career. You got to come prepared.
Big time.
Well, Thomas, it was a pleasure.
Yeah, the pleasure was mine.
Met you forever ago. It's kind of wild. It feels like not that long ago, but it was actually quite a while.
That's how you know we're getting old.
I know. We're getting wise or something.
Yeah. Yeah. That's it.
Where can people find you on the internet? We want to track you down. I know you're a security guy. You're less public, but people want to see you.
If you swing through thomasrayner.ca, there's a find me page. I list a couple of spots that you can chat with me. There's an email address. I think my Discord is there. And I put a lot of effort into making it so you could click that Discord link and it should just open a DM with me. Yeah, I think those are probably the best ways. I'm openly federated on Teams because we work at Microsoft. thomasrayner.ca.
Awesome. Well, thank you, Thomas. And thank you, everybody out there. Give us a like, comment, subscribe. Leave us a comment telling us why you like PowerShell. I don't know. Tell us something. Reach out for the first time in the community. Did you take your first step? Do you remember your first time you said something in the community? We would love to hear it. What else am I supposed to say, Thomas? I'll say this. Hey, we got PowerShell Wednesday every single Wednesday at 2 p.m. PowerShell is a language. You should expose yourself to it and use it regularly. Talk to your managers. Say, hey, yo, 2 p.m. Eastern, I gots to grow. And you can join us there. We always have great things popping off every single Wednesday. We have that every single Monday. We have new podcasts. So one more thing. All right. If you are a PowerShell beginner, I'd love to hear from you. I'd love to understand some of the challenges that PowerShell beginners are dealing with now so I can hopefully better help the problem. And two, if you are a Git/GitHub expert, and you've been doing it for a lot, have some open source projects, and you are interested in doing some more open source work, I'm putting together a little team of people. I'll release more information in the future, but Gilbert's on it. So if you want to work with Gilbert and I doing some cool open source stuff, feel free to hit me up on socials. That's at Andrew Plaw Tech. Join us on the PDQ Discord, discord.gg/PDQ PowerShell scripting channel. Always popping off. Loving the vibes in there. Been a little unruly this week, but Thomas, thank you for listening to that whole spiel. Thank you, everybody. Until next time.
Thanks for listening to the PowerShell Podcast. The PowerShell Podcast is a PDQ production, making device management simple, secure, and pretty damn quick.